This is T-Chan here with Game Dev Loadout, and thank you for joining me. Welcome to episode 47, where I chat with the best people in the game industry 7 days a week. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast for a new daily episode filled with inspiring story. And now let's chat with today's featured guest, Dave Lane. Dave, it is go time. Are you ready?
I hope so.
Dave is the C3PO of Iron Galaxy, aka the founder, and the
Correct.
company was founded in 2008 and has worked on games such as Street Fighter 3 Online Edition, Divekick, and more. Currently, they are working on Killer Instinct Season 3, and Dave basically focused on assisting other developers achieving their goals. So go ahead, Dave, give us a bit about your personal life and how you got started in the game industry.
Yeah, I got really fortunate. So I came up kind of with the birth of computers in homes. Like I got started programming on a Commodore 64 that my parents were fortunate enough to get me in the 6th grade. I just kind of got the programming bug way back then. Kept programming through high school and college and didn't even realize you could do it professionally for a living. About to graduate in 95 and kind of started that's when I realized someone must make these games, right? This must be a thing you do. So instead of making calculators or whatever I was going to do, I applied to every game developer under the sun, got really lucky, and got my start out at Sculptured Software out in Utah.
Oh, nice. And let's break it down. What do you consider your main area of expertise?
So it used to be programming. So from, like I said, I was making games kind of amateur level from like 6th grade until end of college. Then I graduated college, and I pretty much did programming from like 96 until 2003. 2000 and geez, it's been 2003. I went to Midway. So I said about in 2005 I stopped programming. I became tech director. So it's still very technical in nature. It's still working with programmers, but it's a lot less like hands-on keyboard doing code. And I was there until 2008 when I left to start Iron Galaxy. When we got that started, I still did a lot of programming, but now I pretty much just do business stuff. I haven't programmed in probably like 4 or 5 years.
So I'm very curious. So you help other companies, make their games. What is something we probably don't know about when working with another company to make a game that we should know?
Yeah, it's interesting. So like there's a bunch of aspects to our business, like you mentioned, like Killer Instinct and Divekick, where we do our own stuff. But a lot of what we do is just like dig in and help out other people, whether it's like, they need performance improvements or they're tight on memory or they just want to get like the controller hooked up or whatever it is to get their game done on time. The biggest thing to appreciate when you're doing that work is that every developer is different and every developer works a little bit differently. And it's really good to spend time to understand like what they want and what their processes are and how they schedule and how often they want to communicate. It's also good to understand that some developers are just going to be better at working with external devs than others. And when you recognize some of the ones that need some help, spend a little more time educating them on how to get the most out of you.
And is there like a common mistakes when working with like another company? Is there something that usually just turns up, makes the process harder or something like that?
It's a really complicated question and a very complicated answer. The super short version is you need to actively manage everyone on the team. Like if they're sitting next to you or you've been working with them for 10 years, you still need to be engaged with what people are doing. And that goes doubly for external devs. I think a lot of people, they still want to throw work over the fence and get it back. And sometimes they're surprised when it's not exactly what they wanted. But, external devs aren't mind readers. We don't know, exactly what you had in mind. Maybe this design doc is old. We weren't in that meeting you needed us at or whatever. And so you really got to be very, very actively managing external devs to get the most out of them.
Yeah, you got to keep, I guess that communication has to be up to date and everything.
Correct, yeah.
Now, overall, what are your key principles for better game development? Something that would like streamline the development process?
Yeah. So, this applies more to larger teams than like, 1 or 2 person indie teams or whatever. But I think it's still something good to keep in mind. Like, I think the most important thing, like game dev is the most collaborative thing in the world. You've got artists, left brain people, designers, very creative people. You got programmers, mostly right brain people. Audio people, UI experts, testers, producers. You got business people in there making sure the game's going to make money and is going to get done on time. So you have all these people that have to work together in harmony. And so I think the biggest thing is just kind of learning to be a really good teammate. And that can mean a lot of different things. That can mean like one, just like being pleasant to work with, not having a bad attitude when you come to the office, and being positive about the work you're trying to get done, being helpful. Like game development's really hard, and people fall behind on tasks all the time. Stuff's harder than you thought it was. When that happens to a teammate, have some empathy, maybe even help them out a little bit, because it sure is going to happen to you one day. And I know you'll appreciate all the help you get when you're in their shoes. So, I think the first cardinal golden rule I have is just be the best teammate possible. And it's kind of hard to go wrong from that point.
I love that, because you want someone to lean on, someone that you can ask for advice, someone that could help encourage you when the times are tough. So yeah, you want that teammate always next to you all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a lot of people just like, interviewing for hard skills is pretty easy. Like figuring out, okay, does this engineer know C++ really well? That's not too hard to interview for. But figuring out, okay, what's it going to be like to work with this person, 40 hours a day for the next 3 years? That can be a lot harder. And it's something we put a lot of emphasis on and trying to figure out, like, am I just going to enjoy coming to working with this person every day? And we weigh all those things pretty equally. Like you need to have, some bare minimum of technical abilities. I say bare minimum, that bar is actually pretty high, but you need to have whatever. And you also need a pretty high bar of just like, quote unquote, decent human being, right? Like you have to be someone we're excited to work with every day.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, you want to go with someone you just have fun working with.
Yeah.
Now let's take this on a more personal level. You've been in the game industry for years now, and I'm pretty sure you had some bad moments. What was the worst moment of your career? That one moment that's still vivid in your mind. Be very detailed and tell us that personal story.
Probably the worst moment of my professional career is the night Racketeer launched. For those who don't know, Racketeer was a Xbox 360 launch title, or sorry, not launch title, Summer Arcade game. It was kind of it was a Kinect version of like third person Angry Birds. You kind of had this big catapult, and you'd reach your hands out and pull this huge catapult back and launch these rocks in the air and try to take down these big castles. It was really fun and really well constructed. And it was a big game for us because it was kind of the first original IP we've ever created at Iron Galaxy. And Microsoft was really behind it, obviously, with the inclusion of some of Arcade. We had a big studio party that night to kind of celebrate its launch. And we just kind of kept checking the leaderboard over the course of the night and just realized like no one was playing the game.
Oh, no.
And yeah, it was like everyone's sitting there drinking and having fun and playing games, and we're playing other stuff. And then about 10 o'clock, we kind of knew that this was like no one was interested in the game. And that kind of was really, really depressing. Luckily, it's not the first time. Like most games you work on don't sell. That's just the nature of games, that they're hit driven. But we just had so much invested in that one personally. It was a game I worked on a lot. I was heavily involved in the direction of the game, and so for a lot of reasons we had a lot riding on that one. And then when just kind of realized like, nope, this is not what you wanted it to be. Really, really depressing couple of days there pulling out of that.
See, I think most game devs fear that, like what just happened to you, the game just did not do well and y'all invested so much time into it. What do you want to make sure game devs take away from that experience? Like, they need to realize that you just never know, I guess, what the market might be like. You just never know if your game might do well or not do well.
Well, yeah, I mean, anytime you start a game, like I think it's really easy to see all the success stories, and just kind of pay attention to those and be like, how hard can it be? But 90% or higher of games just are commercial failures, right? Probably even higher percentage than that. And you need to understand that no matter how good your game is, how original your idea is, or how well it's crafted, the odds are still really against it that it's going to find like success in the marketplace. And you can't make your happiness and your desire to work on games based on the game's success. And like one thing I learned just a long time ago is, when I think back on games I worked on, I don't remember any review scores. I don't remember anything that someone said bad about the game or whatever. And what I do remember though is those times like, it was 3 a.m. and Coleman and Ramon got online working in Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. We played the first online match in that. And I remember all these little moments on Blitz the League with the first time we saw like the in-engine cutscenes going at frame rate, and just, I remember all these little things with my teammates, they're moments that you take away from that. And so, I think the true path to happiness in game dev isn't revolved around your, how your titles do or how they're perceived, but it's about just like working with people you love and cherishing those memories of those games you make with them forever. And that's one more reason I believe in good teammates are very important.
Yeah, I really like that perspective because, you can't forget all the things you've been through during developing the game because, it's long and hard. You can't just forget all about that. And so it's good to you cherish that and you learn from it as well for your next game.
So much of a game being successful or not in the marketplace is just truly out of your control, right? Like it could be wrong game, wrong time, right? Like it could be like, what if you launched 2 weeks after Battlegrounds launched this year, right? No one is playing anything but Battlegrounds right now, So that's, how could you have possibly known that when you were working on your game, right? So you just can't get too caught up in the results and you have to enjoy the process.
Yeah, enjoy the process and just keep making your next game. Do not let it discourage you, game devs. Now, you have a lot of experience now and you're much better equipped. What do you think was the best investment you've made? And it could be investment of money, time, or energy. And how did you decide to make that investment?
Oh, geez, that's a good question. I would say probably, I'll try to think of one from when I was getting started and one from more recently. I think when I was getting started, I kind of taught myself how to program. And because of that, I was not a super disciplined programmer. I was not a super by the books programmer, like I couldn't really tell you the ins and outs of C++. I just kind of knew how to make things work. And then one day I kind of realized that was a deficiency. And actually, despite, having like 5 years experience in the industry or whatever, decided to kind of get more invested in learning just the fundamentals. And so I kind of started over with really beginner books and just kind of picked up everything I possibly could on figuring that out. And so I'd say no matter how you got where you're at, it's never reinvesting the fundamentals is one of those things that will carry you with you your entire career forward and, made me a much better programmer for years to come. I'd say more recently, one of the best things we've invested in at the studio is a full kind of like disaster recovery protocol where we have a couple different locations. We have one in Chicago, one in Orlando. And we had, I think 3 years ago, we had a fire in the Chicago building, not in our office, but in the building. And all of the sprinkler alarms went off except for our office. And then 6 months later, we had a flood in the Orlando building and we had to shut down the office for 3 days. And it's terrifying, right? Because we work for publishers and we kind of work for milestones and we kind of work check to check. And if those sprinkler alarms would have went off in our office, they would have fried every computer. I don't know how we would have got any work done for a month, and it could have been the end of the business. So now we've kind of spent a lot of money and got all that stuff up. It's not super sexy, but we've got a plan now that no matter what happens, we'll be back up and running in hours to days. So I'd say that's the best money we've spent recently, and that's best investment we made recently.
Yeah, that's a great idea to have a backup plan in case something happens, even outside the building or I guess outside your company. You just never know. Oh man, yeah, that's a great idea. Well, with the game industry booming now, what are you most excited about today?
I just love the breadth of games right now. There's still, I kind of have a personal bias towards playing bigger AAA stuff, but I love that I can dip my toe in the indie pool and play, smaller games and smaller experiences that are very different, very unique, and stuff that just wouldn't find a place, in the market 10 years ago even or whatever, right? So I just really love the breadth of content and hearing a bunch of individual voices is right next to, your Destiny 2s or whatever,
What game are you playing now?
I'm playing tons of Battlegrounds and playing Dream Daddy was the other one. So those are the two I'm kind of working through. I'm playing mostly Battlegrounds though, but I love that game. It's crazy. It's so dumb. It's just the dumbest things happen in that game, and it's different every single time you play it, and it's amazing.
Oh yeah, I heard so many great things about that game.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Awesome. Don't forget, Game Devs, you can check out my website for all the show notes. And now, Dave, we basically have reached near the end called the crunch time, the phase that Game Devs dread, but we are here to overcome it. Basically, I'll ask you quick questions and you'll be giving us a ton of valuable information in return. Are you ready to crush it and release this show?
Let's go.
Let's go. Well, what was holding you back from joining the game industry?
There wasn't an industry when I got started, really. So it's a little different now for them and me. But I think the thing that was holding me back from starting my own company always and kind of joining it in that regard, which I think is more applicable to listeners, is just fear, right? Just fear of knowing okay, I've got a family, I've got kids. Where's the money going to come from? I'd say just fear was holding me back.
What do you think people should do to, I guess, overcome that fear?
Well, I think fear is good. Fear, it can be a stabilizing thing. It can be a grounding thing. You shouldn't ignore fear. You you should listen to it, but you shouldn't let it control you. And so just, be mindful. I like setting boundaries. Like, okay, I'm going to try my own thing. And if I ever get to point X, then I'm going to call it quits. So set rules around the fears you have that, like, okay, if this ever gets too big and too scary, then I'll walk away. And if you set those rules before you get into it, you'll know clearly when to get out.
Yes, define your fears. What's a personal habit that contributes to your success?
I do my best. So you're going to notice the theme here, but I just do my best not to make enemies. The industry is really, really small. I've been at a lot of companies that have closed on me. I probably had like 3 studios close almost overnight on me. And that really sucks every single time. But the one thing that's kind of cool about it is everyone from the studio goes everywhere in the world to work at other studios. And so now I know someone that works at Riot or Blizzard or Midway or Tiburon or whatever it is, right? And if you were a jerk or a mean person to work with, you're probably never going to get a job at any of those companies because they're going to ask that person what they thought of you, what you were to work with, what you would like to work with. And I really can't begin to stress enough. Like, it's a really small industry. I'm talking like non-indie here, like more traditional games, but like people know who you are and people have worked with you, and that goes with you everywhere you go. So just be nice and don't be a jerk to work with.
Is that simple? Just be nice. Don't burn bridges and don't make enemies. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
It's okay if the project is late. Just don't be the reason it was late.
Ooh.
That was the best advice I ever got. Like, if there's, so like the metaphor here is like, okay, so the programming team is late. Don't be the last programmer done. It's okay to be the second to last programmer done. Just don't be the last programmer done.
Yeah, don't be the last guy. How has a failure set you up for later success?
Again, it's so business development, which is what I do now, is I'm working with like a lot of publishers like Bethesda and Microsoft and Activision or whomever to figure out these projects we're working on. And in business development, you get told no 99.9% of the time. Like, no, that's not a good fit for you. No, your budget's too high. No, whatever it is. But you try to take something from every single no, and like you learn something about the people you might want to work with one day. It's like, oh, Activision is really concerned about thing X. Got it. And so next time I do a bid for Activision, I'm going to be a little more prepared for it. And so I would say just be mindful of all the conversations you have with people, and do your best to build a mental model of their wants and needs and what they care about, and factor that into all your decisions and your talks with them going forward.
Be mindful. I love that. What resources should we game devs use when developing games or just streamline the game's development?
Yeah, it's really easy to just kind of keep doing the same thing over and over and over in game dev, especially if you don't have like someone on the outside kind of like poking in and looking at it every once in a while. So I think one thing that's really cool about the Chicago game dev scene is there's a bunch of game devs here, like Young Horses or whatever, who did Octodad. And I know they're always showing their games to people. They're always looking at other people's games and they're giving feedback. And the community's kind of grown up around here, so that's the way it is. And I think the best thing to keep you honest and to realize like problems you might not even have, they're not just like game problems, but these could be like tool chain problems. Like someone might just see you working and notice your shader compile takes 15 minutes and you do that 300 times a day. So you're wasting this much time. Like, is there a way to speed that up? So we just point things out to you that you might otherwise be oblivious to. And so I'd say, even though you might be on a small team, you might be on an indie team, find a lot of local help, find different eyes that can look at, what you're making and how you're making it, and just provide feedback. And then, sometimes feedback is hard to hear, but you got to listen to it,
Definitely. Now, this next question is a bit of a doozy, so take your time if you need to. Imagine you woke up the next morning in a brand new world and you knew no one. You still have all the experience and knowledge you currently have today. Your food and shelter is taken care of and you have a laptop. What would you do step by step on the path to become a great game developer?
That's a very good question. I guess I would find out, is it the same world? Or is it a completely different, there's no Unreal, there's no Unity, there's different things, or is it the same world?
I guess it's the same world. You just don't know no one.
Yeah, I guess what I would do is I would download Unreal 4 and I would start making something. I don't know what I'd make off the top of my head, but I think the best thing for getting your name out there and showing people what you can do, more so than like the work, or more so than like, your word or you being friendly on Twitter or whatever, is just the work. And come up with a cool demo. It doesn't have to be a full game. Just come up with something that shows you're passionate and you've got what it takes to kind of get started. And, just use that as kind of like a calling card to show like, hey, this is what I bring to the table. And then find cool people you like and then just kind of work with them on similar things.
And, build that portfolio.
Yeah.
Dave, we have reached the end. Go ahead and give us a parting piece of guidance and how we can connect with you, and then we'll say goodbye.
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Joseph J. Brony. Iron Galaxy is at I to the G. I'm pretty active on Twitter. I try to respond to almost everybody. If you have any questions, don't be shy. Hit me up on there. And if you've got any games you want me to look at, I'll take a look at those too. It's pretty cool.
Ooh, and what do you want to leave us a parting piece of guidance?
For guidance, I would say, I'd say everyone is different. Everyone's path is different. No one piece of advice is going to fit everyone's situation, So even though the stuff I've said here may or not be applicable to you. So I would listen to everybody. I would take all the advice in and try it. But if it's just not working, if the advice just feels wrong to you when you're implementing it, feel free to discard it. And just remember, you're different. Your situation is different. You might be on your own path.
There you go, Game Devs. Dave has been dropping so much value bombs today. Hit him up. He is willing to help you out. So take the opportunity to ask him questions. Dave, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. And for that, we are truly grateful. And we will catch you next time.
Thanks, Tony.